The movie opens with Frank Vega, a veteran of the Vietnam War, quietly seated on his usual bus ride. Out of nowhere, two skinheads step onto the bus and immediately begin stirring up trouble. What happens next will forever alter Frank's life. The film then shifts back to Frank's early years. He grew up on a humble farm in California where he lived a modest but joyful childhood. He enjoyed the little things in life and fell deeply in love with his girlfriend, Lindsay, with dreams of one day marrying her. But those plans were suddenly interrupted when the Vietnam War began. Frank assured Lindsay he'd be home soon, but the war stretched his service into 7 long years, including a full year where he was taken prisoner. During that captivity, Frank suffered brutal torture and endless interrogations until he finally escaped. After sustaining injuries in battle, he was eventually sent home to recover. The first thing Frank did when he left the hospital was rush to see Lindsay, only to learn she had married another man and started a family of her own. Brokenhearted, Frank tried to rebuild his life. He applied to the police academy, confident that his military background would help, but was rejected because of his serious injuries. Without a college education, he struggled to find steady work and faced rejection after rejection. With little left to fall back on, he ended up selling hot dogs on the street. Before he realized it, for decades of his life had slipped away. Back in the present day, Frank boards his regular bus route when the same two skinheads climb aboard and begin harassing an elderly passenger, demanding that he move seats. When the old man refuses, they prepare to assault him, but Frank steps forward. At first, he tries to calm them down, telling them he has no interest in fighting. But when they push him too far, Frank responds with force and quickly takes them down. The passengers cheer loudly, and one of them records the entire fight on their phone. The video is uploaded online and goes viral on YouTube, making Frank an unexpected internet celebrity. Suddenly, people call him a badass. His image is painted onto murals, printed on t-shirts, and reporters rush to interview him. Even the police treat him like a local hero, giving him rides home. Frank's mother beams with pride over her son's sudden fame. But the joy doesn't last long. Soon after, Frank's mother passes away, leaving him her home and beloved dog. With her gone, the only family Frank has left is his closest friend, Klondike, who also served in Vietnam. One day, while helping Frank move into his new house, Klondike and Frank reminisce about their time in the war. With deep emotion, Klondike thanks Frank for saving his life during battle. Before leaving, he hands Frank a mysterious flash drive and asks him to keep it locked in his safe. Frank, not familiar with modern technology, agrees without questioning him. Later that day, Klondike stops at a store for cigarettes, but he is followed by a suspicious car. Two men step out and demand the flash drive. Klondike denies knowing anything. When one of them pulls a gun, Klondike fights back and knocks them down. But as he turns to leave, one of the attackers shoots him in cold blood. The next morning, Frank is devastated when he is asked to identify Klondike's body at the morgue. Overcome with grief and rage, he begs the police to do everything possible to find the killers. That same evening, Frank goes into a liquor store but doesn't have enough money to buy what he wants. When he asks the clerk to let him pay the rest later, the man refuses. At that very moment, 3 armed thugs storm the shop, attempting to rob it. Frank tries to warn them off, but one points a gun at him. Without hesitation, Frank disarms the man and defeats all 3 robbers before casually walking out of the store with the liquor in hand. At home, Frank sees a news broadcast about a young white man who was recently murdered. The suspect in that case was arrested within a single day. Angered by the disparity, Frank goes back to the police station and demands to know why Klondike's case has seen no progress. The officers claim they are working hard, but Frank has already seen them wasting time around the office. Realizing the authorities won't help him, Frank decides to investigate the case himself, the scene of the crime. He discovers 3 crucial clues: a spent bullet casing, a broken chain, and a locket with a woman's picture inside. He takes the items to a pawn shop, where the clerk examines them. The clerk explains that the casing belongs to a specialized kind of ammunition once reserved for government or military agents. He doesn't sell them. However, the clerk recognizes the woman in the photo. She is married to a man named Terrence, who lives only a few blocks away. Frank goes to Terrence's home, where a weary woman answers the door, holding a baby. She explains that Terrence has not been home in weeks, leaving her and their 3 children alone. Before Frank leaves, she mentions that some friends had recently spotted Terrence hanging around a basketball court. Frank heads there and starts asking questions, but the locals are uncooperative and try to jump him. Frank easily takes them down, forcing them to change their tune. They finally point him toward a man named Ronaldo. Frank follows their lead to an address and finds a man dressed like a preacher. Mistaking Frank for a thief, the man gets defensive, but once Frank explains, he tells him Ronaldo can usually be found at a local bar in the mornings. That evening, Frank overhears his neighbors Amber and her husband arguing outside. The man storms off, leaving Amber with her son. Frank notices a bruise on Amber's face and gently invites her in to treat the injury. They share a quiet evening, and Frank enjoys a rare moment of peace. The next morning, Frank heads to the bar in search of Ronaldo. As soon as he arrives, men downstairs recognize him and warn him to leave, but Frank has to fight his way through. After taking them down, he finds Ronaldo upstairs. When Frank mentions Terrence, Ronaldo pulls a knife, but Frank overpowers him and dangles him out a window until he confesses. Ronaldo admits that Terrence has been involved with a woman working at a nearby massage salon. On his way home, Frank is stopped by Officer Mailer, a cop friend, who warns him that his vigilante actions have put him on the department's radar. The chief nearly issued a warrant for his arrest, and Mailer barely stopped it. He advises Frank to back off, insisting that solving crimes is not his responsibility. Frank refuses, making it clear he will keep going. When he arrives home, Frank finds his house ransacked. Before he can react, a large intruder grabs him from behind, demanding the flash drive. Frank pretends not to know what he's talking about before throwing the man out the window. Realizing he needs answers, Frank asks his neighbor Martin to check the contents of the flash drive. Inside are maps, permits, and a list of contacts. One strange name stands out: Panther. Determined, Frank visits the massage salon and books time with Tatiana. When he mentions Terrence's name, she becomes nervous and flees. Frank follows her home, sneaking in through the back. A neighbor confronts him, suspicious, but quickly changes his tone once he recognizes Frank as the viral badass. The neighbor even tips him off that the back door is always unlocked. Inside, Frank finds Terrence with Tatiana. Terrence panics and reaches for a gun, but Frank overpowers him and shoves his hand into a garbage disposal, forcing him to talk. Terrence screams in pain and confesses that it wasn't him who killed Klondike. The murder was carried out by his partner Sebastian, both acting under Panther's orders. At first, Terrence resists naming Panther, but after more torture, he admits Panther is the boss and reveals his location. That night, Frank again hears his neighbors fighting, this time worse than before. When Amber's husband turns violent, Frank intervenes and forces him to leave. Amber, emotional, thanks Frank for protecting her. She invites him to dinner once he is rested, since her son will be away for the night. Frank skips the nap, dresses in his best clothes, and brings flowers. Amber is pleasantly surprised. They share a beautiful dinner in her garden. She confides that cooking for someone who truly appreciates it feels wonderful. They talk about her troubled marriage, and later, they nearly share a kiss before being interrupted when Martin's sleepover is canceled. Instead, the three spend a happy evening together. At the end of the night, Frank offers Amber and Martin a place to stay since their door is broken. The next day, Frank prepares for his biggest mission. He first meets Officer Mailer and hands him the flash drive, who confirms its contents are dangerous enough to have gotten Klondike killed. Frank then goes to church and quietly confesses to a priest that he is about to commit a terrible sin. That evening, he storms the warehouse Terrence had pointed him to. At first, the guards deny him entry, but Panther soon emerges. Frank confronts him, demanding justice for Klondike. Panther casually admits the murder, saying Klondike stole something valuable, and demands the flash drive. When Frank plays dumb, Panther orders him tied to an electric chair. But Frank, hardened by war and torture, refuses to break. Panther storms off, leaving his men to finish the job. What Panther doesn't expect is Frank's hidden box of matches. Frank ignites nearby fuel, causing an explosion that frees him. He escapes the burning warehouse and confronts Panther outside. They fight viciously, with Panther injuring Frank before fleeing. Panther hijacks a city bus. Recognizing Frank, another driver hands him the wheel of his own bus to give chase. The pursuit ends when Panther collides with a train, flipping Frank's bus. Both survive, and as Frank limps after him, he is ambushed by the same two skinheads seeking revenge. Frank defeats them once again. Meanwhile, Panther forces his way into Frank's home and threatens Amber. She bravely resists, wielding a knife, but before he can hurt her, Frank arrives and smashes him into the wall. Their final battle spills onto the street. Panther nearly gains the upper hand until Amber intervenes, giving Frank the chance to finish him off. Neighbors pour out to cheer as Frank emerges victorious. Amber tenderly tells him it's her turn to care for his wounds. The following day, news headlines declare, "The badass is back." But this time, it isn't just about stopping thugs on a bus. Frank has uncovered a massive corruption scandal linking Mayor Williams to organized crime. For his courage, he is named an honorary police officer. At long last, Frank finds peace, living happily with Amber and young Martin, surrounded by a community that now truly respects him.